of Ash and Flo. This is Unbillable Hours, a podcast about professional services marketing. Stick around to listen to our insights, tips, and best practices to improve your firm's marketing and even your career.
All right, let's get into this. I think I hit the record button. Welcome back to who's on the show again to join Ash and myself, because we promised all of you that we would get back into the workshop session, which we closed last time with this idea of upselling, right? Or using messaging to inform your account expansion strategy. I think that was how we loosely framed it, if I remember correctly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Essentially,
we did say that we needed to bring Ute back because for this particular conversation, we needed Ute's expertise.
Yeah, exactly. Because last time, so Ute was here once, presented her account strategy framework. Ute, thanks for that. I relinked that in the show notes because I can't remember which episode that was. Then I presented sort of the messaging framework I use a lot because I felt it was a good fit. Ute was kind enough to agree, and I thought, Ute, this time we bring you back on. We go through the messaging framework again, but then I ask you which of the exercises, workshop exercises, or tools in your toolbox, for lack of a better word, might be a good fit. So we can. That's in part 3 of the series, concluding everything, because this is how we screw the two frameworks together. What do you say? Does that work?
First of all, thanks for having me back. It's always a great time with you guys. And yeah, no, totally. I mean, what you just outlined makes perfect sense. So just from our loosey-goosey ideation session last time, let's drive it home now and see how we can bring it all together in a workshop format.
Cool. So I just brought up the messaging framework here again on the screen, which people listening can't see. But to recap, that has this loose idea that we try to get to a story, right, which we can use as part of to inform our account strategy or to tell the client on the account. And that story consists of a change that sort of causes some disruption, where then the clients we work with have to respond to. They have to go from A to B. They will encounter some issues along the way, which we position ourselves to be very capable of helping with, right? And then we present them with a plan to progress. I think that's loosely the idea. So, or in consulting speak, right? We establish some sort of burning platform that creates a need for some change, and then we provide the tools to help with that change. I think that's the idea. And I would be interested if we talk about the elements of that messaging. Like the first thing is the change, is the disruption, is the overarching issue, so to speak, that sets the story in motion. Do you have any workshop exercises or things that could help us discover those as we work on the account?
Mm-hmm. So for discovery of these environmental changes that happen for any account that we want to look at, there are actually 2 tools that I would bring. The first one being a Pastel Analysis. So people have probably heard about those. They look at like political, economic, ecological, whatever factors, and just map out mega trends that are happening in a country, in an industry, in a particular field where this account is operating. So what you would do there is get people together around a table, probably just in a world where you can be together. You put it up on a wall as a big poster, and people can just write what factors come to mind that are important in the different categories. Or you could do it in a virtual, I don't know, just an example, as a mural board or whatever. So
yeah,
there are options to do that. Yeah. So you just map those out and then look across, okay, what are really the big ones? So do a little bit of prioritization afterwards. And then a second exercise that you could look at, and this is then also taking the particular account more into consideration, would be a POTUS 5 forces analysis. So for those who hear this for the first time, so Michael Porter is one of the professors at Harvard Business School, and he has come up with this framework back in the 80s that maps out industry trends. So it's looking at almost a power map of what's happening in an industry. So you are looking at competitors, you are looking at new entrants that are coming into the market, etc. There are all these factors. Don't want to be super complete here, but then you just start the same exercise again. Look through, okay, what are the big trends in each of these boxes, and how does this industry dynamic change presently? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you've done, again, a little bit of a prioritization at what are the big ones, what are the small ones. So what you then do is look across these factors that you have prioritized and think, okay, so what is it that's coming out there? Yeah, and I mean, there are always two ways of looking at the same problem, but this is then the first step of where you start to create a story. So how do you position a certain influence from the outside world? Threat or opportunity?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ash, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I was just going to say that SWOT analysis is actually so important to set the stage, because where you like start to hone down your narratives before you even get into like thinking about your buyers and issues and position and all that.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, I do sometimes, I mean, these frameworks are brilliant, and like you said, if you can run a workshop experience, and you probably should, right, if the account is big enough, then these are great. If you are in a hurry though, I sometimes you just use straightforward questions that sort of borrow from these, but nail it way down or simplify it. And I just wanted to call out one which I find helpful is I always ask the question of diminishing returns, right? If the consultants you work with are experts in a certain area, I ask them, what is stuff you have been doing for the last 3 to 5 years, and it's clear to you that they no longer work as well as they once did. That's just one example. There are more questions of this sort, but sort of trying to get a quick view on where is stuff stopping to work and what things are emerging that you think will work in a couple of years or something like that. That's another interesting thing to get towards a change, or maybe get a little bit ahead of something, right? Which you might be an early mover on. But yeah, Ash, you mentioned the buyer, which that is next in our framework, and I think we don't have to concern ourselves with like there is a discipline of market segmentation and creating buyer profiles and so forth.
Absolutely. Yep.
I think that's clear and cool. But Ute, I remember a conversation we had a while ago where you mentioned that you do, when you try to tease out a little bit more the emotional state or the motivations or the internal worlds of the clients you're working with, you do exercises which I think designers describe this as empathy mapping, right? Where do you know what I mean? Like you mentioned an exercise you did once in a workshop. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, because I thought that was helpful.
Yeah, oh, that's absolutely one of my favorites. I really, really like this. And I have also used this in my consulting time to bring home what is the concept of client centricity. So we can come to this in a second. So
Cool.
What you essentially do is you put yourself into the shoes of the person that you want to target. And you ask yourself 4 questions. First, what does this person see? What does this person hear? This is like the external influence. Then the internal things that are happening that you can't really influence, but try to, is what are they thinking and what are they feeling? So again, 4 questions. What do they see and hear? What do they think and feel?
Yeah.
And this is really, really brilliant. And you can even use this to redesign a process. So just to bring in the other application of this exercise is, when you think, okay, actually, are we client-centric? You might think for yourself, and it's using the product. What do they see? What do they hear? And as a result, what do they think and feel? And is it doing what I want it to do? And it's a pretty big eye-opener if you do this for the first. It's a really cool exercise.
And just want to add, while you're also thinking about ideal buyers, something that's interesting is once you think about the transformation, there will end up being new ideal buyers. A simple example would be a place that I used to work now literally has a workplace transformation lead. That sort of thing would not be that common in most organizations, and that's literally an entire new buy criteria. Interestingly enough, these people also came from the R&D background, so segmenting and coming up with new buyers is something that you'll also come across as you do all the process that you're talking about, Ute.
Yeah, I like that, because that might give merit or an additional angle, again, if you have the time and resources to do it. But you could do that empathy mapping and see if you need to repeat that for certain buyer cohorts. To your point, Ash, either there's completely new buyers, so people who have new roles, and with that come new responsibilities and different motivations, right? But another stat I came across, which amazed me, was that the number of millennials in in buying positions, right, is ever increasing. And someone did research and found that, and I don't have it here. I have to dig that out somewhere, the stat. But an increasing amount of people in B2B buying decision-making positions are willing to buy even complex solutions north of a $1 million ticket price entirely on. This doesn't go all the way back to empathy mapping. What I'm just saying is that the preferences or the feelings or the ideas these buyers have may vary depending on which generation they're from, right? Where the slightly older buyer, 45 and older, thinks, okay, this process is totally cool. I like to speak to the business development manager and discuss things. And the younger buyer says, why can't I buy the service on a freaking website, right? So the responses might be different depending on which shoes you're stepping in. I think that's an interesting aspect.
I do want to add to that point, Flo, that
yeah,
millennials are getting older, hence they're getting more into the decision-making roles. This is a kind of generational shift that occurs within organizations as time goes by. So I think what needs to be factored in is like the decision timeline and the, whole process as you're going through the transformation. And as Ute mentioned, when you're doing the Pastel analysis, you also will be looking at, what's a new generation of decision makers, because their thinking, buying habits are all different. So I think that often gets factored in, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ute.
No, totally, absolutely. I mean, this is really one of the important aspects that you see in the Pastel analysis, like what trends are also coming from the buyer groups of the end product. Yeah, definitely big trend that you need to look into.
And maybe, Ash, if I may, sort of plugging our own episodes, but when we had Mark on from one of the founders of Happen, he gave us this example. Ute, you'll love this. He said they observed their buyers and realized that a lot of the innovation managers who bought their service would read agency pitches like those from Happen in Friday afternoons when their work week was done, with a guilty conscience because they wanted to get back to the agency on a Monday. So they would read it on a Friday afternoon on their way home, sitting in the tube on their cell phone. And that's why Happen ensured that they did send proposals out in PDF format, but each proposal would come with a plain email summary that you could read on a BlackBerry, right, without breaking your thumbs, that gave you all the important specifics on one screen. Which, that's a tiny thing, but I think that's exactly what empathy mapping exercises maybe can give you at the end of the process, right? These types of ideas, which I thought was cool.
Absolutely. And especially in a market where everything is kind of similar. Yeah. Let's be honest, things can really make the deal. So brilliant example.
Cool. Moving us along, I don't know. The next big thing in the framework is the issue point of view, like where we position how we as the service providers see the challenges our clients will likely encounter because of the change we described, right? And my guess is this is SWOT analysis territory, or what exercises would you bring in to tackle that part of the process?
That is indeed SWOT analysis territory. So, but you kind of shift the focus a little bit, and you look at yourself. So, what are you really good at delivering, and why are you good at delivering it, and how can you pull on these strengths to support this storyline, or be very open about where you are probably not the best supplier in the market or don't have the full expertise, but how do you still ensure that the client gets the best possible outcome? Yeah, so it's an honest conversation. Actually, looking in the
I like that, and as a follow-up, when you walk me through some of your exercises, you usually do the SWOT analysis, right, and then you flip that on its head in a way to get to the areas where the firm or the practice or the team does have an advantage, and right, how's that? How did you call that? Do you remember what I mean? There's a flip side of the SWOT, where you get to the more strategic angle of it. How did that work?
Ooh, I'm not sure. I have an exact word for it. I mean, we always say the SWOT needs to have a so what.
Oh yeah,
so
that was it. Yeah, that was exactly the play. Yeah. That was exactly the play. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. No, a SWOT with a so what. This is what we're getting at here. So I mean, when we say what do we mean by the so what? It's actually not just collecting the inputs for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and the objectives that you bring to the table for what you try and reach with the SWOT analysis. No, but it's actually about then deriving strategies by combining strengths and weaknesses with opportunities and threats to achieve objectives.
Yeah.
So this is where the so what exercise comes in. It's so it's actually about really crafting, I think, what we call ultimately an offering out of it.
It goes into that, right? I think that's also where this is the big exercise, right? Which I think I don't know how much time you spend with teams on that, but because it helps us to get to the issue point of view of our story. Because if we know what we're good at and which issues we can really help with, that of course informs the way we talk about the client's issues in the first place, right? But we will map those to our strengths. I mean, that's how this works. And then it also helps with positioning ourselves as the best guides, which is the next part of the framework. And you said it also leads us to actually developing an offering. How long do you like that? Is this like a 2-day exercise sometimes for large accounts? How much time do you often spend on that?
Yeah. So for both exercises, like the external, so the account analysis and then the self-reflection, both of them are a day, and these 2 days should be probably 6 to 8 weeks apart from each other. Yeah. So the whole process is like a 3 to 4 month journey, but we're talking about really the account strategy here. So this is not for a quick proposal when you need it like the next day. So it's kind of a different game. Yeah.
All right. And it goes, I mean, we're walking through this pretty quickly with some workshop exercises, but there is lots of research and data gathering and stuff in between, right? That is that's the type of homework you have to do before you head into these sessions we're currently discussing, right?
Totally, 100%. And there are different types of research that go into this. So there is a simple desk research. There is probably, if you have a research department in your company, reaching out to them, getting a first analysis with their help. And there is, most importantly, asking the client.
Speak to the client. Do not have those. I mean, do not have those conversations.
Exactly.
And you touched upon this in both the two previous episodes, like that it's always a good idea to do parts of this and as a co-creation exercise if the relationship allows for that, right? Like bring the client in, or at least run your preliminary results from a session by them and so forth to get that validated and get them interested in what you're working on. So just wanted to stress that again. And then, I mean, I think that we don't have to go through the full framework because the last stuff is a bit more sort of tactical and salesy messaging stuff, but we have the buying plan, which you said that is where we essentially present our offering, and we have probably started to get an idea of what that might be with the SWOT analysis, but I think you still have to define it more clearly and lay it out and package it and whatnot. And I think people could follow. There's a value proposition canvas type thing. It's a very famous book. I think it's called Value Proposition Design. That could be a good one here in terms of frameworks. And then Ash, you brought us the Good Services book last time around.
I was literally going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because, we need to simplify these things before people buy an offering. It needs to make sense to the audience. And you and I were having a discussion. Ute, we'd like to let you know about this as well, that often with a lot of like consultancy firms, especially the large ones, we seem to speak to our external audience in really complicated, jargony manner, whereas we speak to our internal audience as if they were 5-year-olds. In fact, when it should probably be switched around, where our internal audience are all tech, geeky, engineering type people who know the complex jargon would probably lap up that kind of conversation, and our external audience would like things to be explained in a simpler manner.
Yeah.
I mean, you can let us know what you think, Ute, on this note, which I know is slight diversion, but it's also like fitting into what the offering messaging and stuff relates to.
Yeah. No, I definitely onto something here. I think from my perspective, it's super important that you are clear about the types of objectives that you help your audience achieve. Yeah. So this is the way how we typically in those workshops try and cut through the jargon, as you say, because I think there is this tendency of just showering a client in a perception of, look how competent I am by using all this jargon, and then in the end nobody knows exactly what was said. So the way to cut through that is to bring it home. And again, this goes a little bit into this empathy mapping and really understanding your audience. So think about the people you are targeting and think about what are the objectives that they try to reach. And typically there are 3 levels of objectives. There's the super obvious ones that you could almost get from, I don't know, the company website, like what are their big company objectives? Who do they want to be? What do they want to achieve? What are their, I don't know, growth objectives for the next 5 years? God knows what. So these kind of things. Then it gets a bit more specific. Look at what's the unit that this person sits in. What are the objectives that they try to reach for that part of the company? And then there are the objectives of that person. So do they want to retire early? Have a quiet life? Do they want to get a promotion? There can be so many things there. And the more you can really wrap up the offering and answer to all of these questions that the person might have, the better and more compelling the story will be that you can tell.
Nice. Just one question in terms of the workshops you run or any exercise you might have in the back pocket for the offering creation. Do you go in as deep as, I don't know, an actual offering development team would go maybe and say, okay, which deliverables would we include in whatever we're suggesting, or what could pricing be, or is that for later typically?
That's happening on the tactical level. So the workshops that I've been driving were really on the strategic level. So we would have stopped at a point where we said, okay, this is the client objective. Yeah. This is the threat in the external environment that we need to somehow counter with the strength that this client has, and how can we bundle this up, and what does it look like? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we're close to the time mark, but I did forget when I said let's start off with this. There's one last point I want to get your views on is, I think the value prop, right, which is what holds it all together, is sort of important. So we should touch on it. I don't know if you have any exercise of views on that, but that's where it should be brought together. Like that's the actual sort of value proposition to the specific account or client. Do you have any insights, tips for that?
It's a pretty simple table that we typically use for that. So you pick one of the offerings that you want to bring home, and you map it against the 3 different levels of objectives that I've just outlined. So company-wide objectives, unit-wide objectives, personal objectives. And then you just go through and review the offering and see what do you need to add to it so that it becomes compelling on all levels. And if you actually just draw a frame around all of this, you have the value proposition story components.
Nice. And I just want to call out for people that this method you described, what it does, it profoundly contextualizes what we're offering. And I think that is actually, that's important to me, because when we speak about value propositions, I'm not talking about, oh, you do this and we have saved other clients, I don't know, 15% of OpEx by doing this, right? That's a general sort of benefit of a solution. It's not a specific value proposition to a specific account. Because the number for them might be different, and then B, this is exactly what you just said, Ute, is even if they get the 15%, you should be putting that into the context of their organization, the other objectives they might have, right? So I could say, we could save you these 15%, so you have the money to finance the modernization of those plants in Hungary you wanted to. I don't know, I'm making this up, but really show the bigger picture for them, not just a generic, everybody who buys this gets it type benefit of the solution. I think that's very important, and it gets missed more often than you'd expect, in my experience. Brilliant. Ash, do you have anything to add? Any more questions for Ute maybe?
I don't actually. I feel like we continue on from what we had last time. Plus, we actually got to plug 2 key books again, which is always a good thing.
We should get paid for those. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's cool. We do it for free. Well, thank you, Ute, for joining, for wrapping this up. I think you sort of, this brings a workshopy session intermezzo season to an end. Ash, we'll from here continue with more guests again, right? Ramping up that side of the show. And everybody stay tuned and for more good stuff like this. Thanks.
Thanks for having me again.
And that's a wrap for today.
Nice.
Thanks for listening to Unbillable Hours. If you want more, tune in next week. You know where to find us.